For the lunchtime break of day 9 of Tranche 1, Phase 3 of the Undercover Policing Inquiry. I am not alone. I am joined with Alison.
Afternoon.
From Police Spies Out of Lives, who sat through this morning's hearing. What did you make of it?
Well, lots really. What did I think? There are a couple of corkers. One,
there was, wasn't there?
Yeah, one was the idea that the reason they didn't infiltrate the far right was because they were violent and involved in criminality.
Yeah, yeah, great, yeah. But also that they could get all the information from the far left.
And they could get all the, both counts. But I mean, that first thing about violent and criminal.
Yeah.
It's like, sorry, that is your justification for undercover policing. What do you mean? So basically, infiltrating us lot was not violent, and we weren't involved in criminality.
Clearly, otherwise they wouldn't have.
Otherwise, a bit of fly posting.
They would have been frightened of it otherwise.
Yeah, otherwise it was too risky and too dangerous. So I thought that was interesting. The other thing I thought he mentioned, he conceded that there was a lot of banter, and he didn't use the words, but it obviously was sexist and misogynistic.
Yes.
And then he said something that I thought was interesting, and I haven't had a chance to compare. Well, we can't compare it yet because the transcript isn't available yet. But he seemed to be saying almost exactly the same as the witness whose statement was read out.
Richard Walker, this morning.
Who I was listening to on the bus getting here, but he said something like, they both said, but when men say things and they don't act on them. So we weren't concerned, which is such a fundamental misunderstanding of how a culture of institutional sexism and misogyny functions. That's exactly, forget about whether you act on it or not for a minute. The language creates an atmosphere that is sexist and misogynistic, and of course men are going to then, this idea they're not going to act on it. I don't know, it's like that argument about video games, isn't it? Like, you know what I mean, violent video games, they're fine because no one acts on them. And then,
right.
You can say what you like because no one's really going to act on it.
Yeah, I mean, it's also it bears the hallmarks of a kind of statement that's been dreamt up as like, we'll just say this sort of thing.
No,
and then
right,
draw
exactly.
a line.
It's the same. I want to compare the text because it feels like it was. They've been briefed. This is what they're saying. This is their position. The other thing, when he was pushed on, he was not pushed, but he was asked the same question as Jeffrey Kraft was asked yesterday about what was the risk had you known about. Because they will deny knowing any relationships took place, but had you known, what would you consider? What would your concerns be? And the answer is operational security. No concerns. This one didn't even have concerns for the wives or the family, and absolutely no concerns for the women deceived. Which again goes to that position of no awareness whatsoever about consent, about their role as police officers on duty. In fact, he said, well, it's all down to individuals, isn't it? It's just relationships and down to individuals. So any concern they had about it, even though, as far as they were aware, it never happened, but had it happened, the concern was a risk to the operation. That's all they cared about fundamentally. So there's no thought for any of the people that they were deceiving. There's no understanding of consent. And again, people like listening in can't see it, but I thought when he was talking about the banter, his body language was distinctly shifty. He was kind of, stroking the desk a bit, and there was just quite a lot of movement, where at other times he seemed quite relaxed. I think he felt, he didn't like that. And the other bit that I thought was interesting, and I wonder the extent to which that becomes a kind of a tick on the recruitment later, was they liked amateur dramatics enthusiasts.
Yeah, it was a strange one because as if somehow that would really make them good spies.
Yeah, because they're actors, because they can act and lie.
Yeah. That struck out to me a bit as well.
How about you? What did you?
So there was a couple of things that really stuck out to me. One was on the use of the dead children's identities, where he said he believed in the system of getting the birth certificates of very young children who had died. Also that though he said he'd been proved wrong, but it was proved wrong on his watch. He was a manager when Richard Clarke had to be withdrawn. He was in the pub whilst Big Flame confronted Richard Gibson with the death certificate, which he claims not to have known the details. Yet he was in the pub with a surveillance unit.
Yeah.
I mean, it just doesn't bear, but it doesn't make sense.
But it's the same. Sorry, but it's the same lack of moral compass.
Yeah.
Because
Completely.
They are so convinced of their own, the gretter good.
Yeah,
that they're
the
protecting
greater
Queen's
good.
peace, and that everything they do is in the name of the greater good. And and I think I've tweeted this at some point. Fundamental to this is the adage: what they don't know won't hurt them. That is fundamental.
That really came down to when he was said to reflecting on it now about the use of dead children's identities and the harm and the hurt that has been caused to the families. Do you have any moral implications of that? And he said he said that there was no risk. He didn't think there would ever be a cause of embarrassment to the families, their relatives. And it's really telling, the use of the word embarrassment, because it's been used a lot by former officers. And clearly embarrassment means a very different thing to them than it does to the rest of the English-speaking world. As if the family would be embarrassed this happened. Doesn't make sense.
The other word he used was unravel. And that is a word that Mark Jenner used to me when we had a moment. There was a moment where he was kind of probably being pulled out of the operation, and he was behaving quite strange. And there was something, we were in counselling, and he'd said something in counselling. He was giving dates and they didn't quite add up. I didn't really work it out until after he disappeared, but he obviously had realised he'd made a mistake. And he said something in the pub like, it's all going to unravel. And I think that, and the link to that kind of unravelling, which is he's quite cross about, isn't he? This
very cross about. I mean, he had a go at the inquiry.
Yeah, no, he's angry. He's angry that it's all unravelled and that it's been exposed. But I think the other kind of ludicrousness of what we're being asked to believe here, there's this contradiction that we talked about violence and non-violent, violent groups being not infiltrated because they're too violent. But the other contradiction is the fact that the Special Branch and the SDS within Special Branch is a very, very small family. And yet none of them seem to talk to each other about anything. Because in my family, if somebody had been kind of like excommunicated or kind of like you're not speaking to them, there's like a big feud, everyone will be talking about it. Do you know what I mean? Do you know what they did? And what do you think of it? Yeah, but this is what happened. There'd be a conversation about. And yet here, who is it? HN 300 or someone gets like removed.
Yeah.
And no one's mentioned it to us. And he uses a term as well, which I liked. Rumour control. The rumour control has been very good.
Yeah. I mean, that was on the HN 300 stuff. I mean, I was particularly. I don't want to say I'm impressed by Sir John Mitting, but I've given some very strong criticisms of him this week, and I'm sure he's watched all these videos. I know that the inquiry staff watch these videos. Hello, everyone. But I'm sure Sir John watches these. But I think he's responded to my criticism a bit by intervening in the questioning to really press, and I think he pressed Angus McIntosh today about the fact that previous evidence had been given by former undercover officers about the fact that he had told them about what HN 300, Jim Pickford, had been withdrawn for, about the fact that he'd fallen in love with someone else. And it's not credible that he didn't...
But I have to say, I've got to say as well, I think, the chairman is very sharp. He's listening. I mean, I'm finding it difficult to listen for hours on hours. He is listening to every word, and he's sharp. Yeah, I was impressed as well. I think that was good. I mean, he doesn't want to be taken for a fool, does he? And there's an element of it that,
Oh, I mean, I would say it's very clear that a large number of the former undercover officers are taking Sir John Mitting as a fool.
He's not a fool, is he?
But they assume he is, because they lie to his face and they contradict each other and they get away with it. So maybe they've got a point. I think he needs to press further on that kind of thing if he doesn't want to have that impression given to future witnesses from the police. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Look, it's a whole other world, isn't it? Personally, I don't know about you, but what do I know about public inquiries? This is the first one.
I know fuck all.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
This is the first one I've observed, and you know, I heard somebody talking about the blood inquiry the other day, and saying, you know, that the counsels to the inquiry have asked, are asking very pertinent questions. Like, you know, I think I don't know. I don't know. It's the first public inquiry I've ever watched very closely. It's a lot of information, and a lot of stuff coming out, and I think it's a shame. One of the things I think is a shame, and that would be, we know the reasons for it, but it would be good if the live stream was video rather than just audio, because there is a lot to seeing people's faces, seeing their body language. It does change, because yesterday I was just listening, and it's different.
Yes, it is very different.
And I have to go and get some lunch, and that's someone at the door, so
that
might be your next
Okay, I'm my next guest. Go and get the door for us then,
dude. Paula.
Yeah, it's. I think it is. I think maybe this is something which the inquiry will want to revisit. Perhaps the chairman will want to revisit about the streaming of video. As so many of the officers are obviously lying to him, and he gets to see how they're lying to him, then perhaps he would see the benefit of the video going out generally. Perhaps it would put them on the spot a bit more. He also intervened when to point out that Geoffrey Kraft had said that he was also in the pub outside when Richard Clark was confronted by members of Big Flame with a death certificate. And basically so that him and Neil had been outside. Of course, remember that Angus McIntosh and Geoffrey Kraft claimed to have no memory of working with each other, despite they had been 1 and 2 at the time. But these little sort of details, I think Mitting is doing a much better job of picking up these details and intervening to press the whoever's being questioned on it. One of the exchanges which I thought was particularly telling was on Spy Cops officers having sex with activists. And it was put to Angus McIntosh, did you believe it would have enhanced their cover? To which he said it would in practice. I mean, then couched that in but we never would have told them to, but he admitted that it would in practice. And then it would enhance their intelligence gathering capabilities. To which he said that may well be true, but we obviously wouldn't, encourage it. Another thing was he directly contradicted yesterday's evidence from Geoffrey Kraft about the consumption of alcohol at the twice-weekly meetings, though he did try and downplay it. He tried to pass it off as, well, it would be a drink or two, but he rejected the characterization of it as being moist, because they would be driving with their vans and cars afterwards. And he said earlier on about how concerned he was about drink driving. He said he didn't go to the pub with them after the Safe House meetings. He talked a lot about banter. And about yesterday we heard from Geoffrey Kraft that he wouldn't have tolerated banter of a sexual nature, and if he heard anything about women in that setting, he would have confronted it and not allowed it. To which Angus McIntosh said, on the same question, that it was something he'd been brought up with inside the job, that banter amongst police officers of a sexual nature was just incredibly normal. Having a problem with it would have been strange. Another time where Mitting intervened was when Angus McIntosh changed. I didn't even pick it up myself, and I have to check the transcript, because Angus McIntosh changed the way that he said about Richard Clark letting everyone down, and says that he felt that he let everybody down. To which Mitting intervenes, are you saying now that you did know? To which McIntosh had a flap and realised he'd fucked up. You got the impression that I don't think Mitting believed him, with that he just accidentally spoken wrong. It was clear that he did know. It's obvious he did know. Again, just huge liars. There was a lot more to be said. He claimed he didn't know about Phil Cooper smoking marijuana. He claimed he didn't know about Paul Gray becoming close to a female activist. overall, we've got more to come from Angus McIntosh this afternoon, though it probably won't be that long. I'll probably envisage about an hour from 2, so we may be finished by 3, who knows? You can't tell though, see which way it goes. We'll be back then. Thanks for joining. You can follow along, watch along on YouTube. You can follow what we're tweeting. It's also going in the Facebook group, Spike Ops Info. If you've got any questions or anything, please get in touch. If you'd like to see, if there's any of the former guests I've had on these little video reactions you'd like to see back on, let us know, and I'll try and get them to come back on. I'll tell them they've got fans. All right, cheers. I'll see you all soon.